Hi, everybody. We are going to go over the second reading of the Harlem Hellfighters. So this essential question is, why do you think the soldiers felt so low? And explain their perspective of being in Texas and what they had to deal with. And how do you think that the white soldiers felt in that moment? And all of this will culminate at the end of the reading. So after we get through all of it, it's all going to tie together. But there's kind of a lot to go through here. So they have, in the last reading, they had just joined, they enlisted in the military. We don't have the entire graphic novel up, so we're missing kind of points of this. Some of that is their military training, but there's enough here to get through this. So it says, they arrived in Texas. It says a few weeks earlier, there had been blood in the Lone Star State. The 24th All-Black, All-Volunteer Regiment had been stationed at Camp Logan, just outside Houston, Texas. It says, down here, boys, it costs $25 to kill a buzzard, but only $5 to kill a black person. Insults from the locals became part of daily life, and more than a few were beaten or arrested. And so they're talking about the black military regiment who were volunteers. So it says, one day a rumor got around that the cops had killed one of their men and that a lynch mob of white townsfolk were marching on their camp. So the regiment didn't decide to wait to see if the rumor was true. They decided to fight against it. And what ends up happening is what they would call a race riot. But here they say it wasn't a race riot, it was a reckoning. That kind of Nat Turner-esque nightmare that white America had been dreading since their first ancestors cracked their first whip. So if you guys aren't familiar with Nat Turner, he led a semi-successful slave revolt during slavery. So he got people to rise up and fight against white people. And I think, if my numbers are right, they ended up killing about 60 white people before being stopped. And this was a big fear that white society during slavery had always had, that one day the people who were enslaved would rise up and fight against their condition of enslavement, which, I think that would be a pretty valid thing to do. So white society had always feared an uprising against, the people of color. So by the end of it, it says there were 20 people dead. 16 of those were white and 4 were black. And remember, this was a military regiment. It says another 13 black men were hung for mutiny. And the disgraced 24th Regiment would never get a chance to fight in the Great War. So the people in charge of this unit, the Harlem Hellfighters, are being told this story while they're traveling to this area, that this had just happened and now this is where we're going. So there was just a race riot. There was just this murder of people who look like them in uniforms that look like theirs. And now they were going to the same place. So this was kind of like a precautionary tale. Like, this is what happened. We can't have that happen again. And what they wanted from these black soldiers. So he says, you are instructed to order your men not to engage in any physical confrontation with the local populace. And somebody says, even in self-defense? He says, even if clearly provoked, under any circumstances. Is that clear? It says, gentlemen, if one of those hillbillies gets so much as a black eye, this regiment will spend the rest of the war doing manual labor, assuming we're not disbanded altogether. So, this is, at this point, a band that is integrated right now. They haven't gone to go fight yet, so there are still white soldiers with them. So they're telling the black soldiers that they cannot engage in self-defense because that would put a dampening on their experience. It might mean death for the black soldiers if they were to fight back, but it also had negative repercussions for the white soldiers, and that's the reason that they're being told to not engage. Um, so they're expecting to find trouble in Texas. They're expecting for it to not be a very good experience. So here it says that Colonel William Hayward's organization is unwelcome here, um, is evident from the comments heard in the streets. The whites are outspoken in their opposition to the plan and predict trouble if the War Department fails to heed the protest. There are signs that say white only. They don't want these soldiers there at all. So it says, I was sorry to learn that the 15th Regiment had been ordered here, said Mayor Floyd. So they know that they don't want to be there, and those people don't want them there. But this is the situation. This is what they have to deal with. So it says that for their northern ideas about race equality, they would probably expect to be treated like white men. There's a sign that says no dogs or coloreds in the window. So, sorry, that part was kind of hard to read, so I'm going through. President. Okay, so here somebody got attacked. They were trying to get the mail. And it says, didn't anyone tell you that the sidewalks are for whites only? So they didn't know. They didn't know that they weren't allowed on the sidewalks. So they were walking on the sidewalks, and they ended up getting attacked. They went to go get the mail. They ended up being attacked by a white mob. So somebody says something kind of smart, and he says that down here they have something that's called a hierarchy. So what they're trying to say is that the white race is above them, and that they need to understand that, and that they need to adhere to the nuances of what Jim Crow and segregation meant in the South. Keep in mind that these people that are trying to fight for their country, that are there because the military sent them there, are from the North. They're from other parts of the country. They're not accustomed to the ways that, this type of Jim Crow, this blatant example of that, they're not used to that. While Jim Crow did exist in the North, it was often a lot more hidden. It was kind of weaved into society through, different means than violence and things like that, even though there was, of course, violence there too. So here we see, this guy's gotten beat up and they're not allowed to fight back. He's about to do something pretty terrible. These are his pants, so we can kind of draw from that what they were going to do, which was something that did happen in the South. So right before this happens, they're like white society. We have a woman here in a hat dressed up laughing. So, this isn't just, the Ku Klux Klan. This is people. This is a town. This is the way people felt during this time. And so it says they came out of nowhere, no bugle calls, no horses riding over the hill, but just in time. The cavalry had arrived. So it says only the coloreds ain't allowed to fight back. So in comes the white soldiers. These people of color had been attacked and were unable to fight back, but the white soldiers were able to come in and step in and fight against the white mob because they didn't have that rule. They were allowed to protect themselves. They were allowed to have self-defense. They were allowed to protect the people of color. Just there were different rules. And so, here they're saying that that doesn't apply to us, and they're asking if they're okay. It says, sorry, we didn't get there sooner. Somebody says, us New Yorkers have to stick together. And he says, I knew they meant well, and I should have been grateful. But having to be saved by those white boys made me feel just as low as those other white boys had seen me. Just as low. So here's that part that we're talking about in our essential question, which is, why did they feel low in this moment? Was it because, they had been attacked for walking on a sidewalk while trying to get mail for the platoon? Or was it because they weren't allowed to defend themselves because of the color of their skin? Having to be saved while in a uniform to fight for your country had to have been, a weird psychological game for them. And the pressures, we can think about the pressures that these people were under in this moment, where if they would misstep, they could lose their lives. And so, to go back to how do you think the white soldiers felt? They apologized for being there late. They said we need to stick together because, we have a common bond. We're from New York. They ask if they're okay. So, they were willing to come in. They were willing to step up. They didn't just let it happen. They felt that they had a bond because they were there together. They were there from New York. So the question is, how do you think that they felt? So there's a few different options there. They could feel protective. They could feel responsible for them because they're able to fight when they can't. They might feel sorry for them because, of their experiences and what is happening. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. And then, in the question of why they felt so low, there's a lot of ways to look at that too. They could feel low because, like I said, they had just been attacked. They could feel low because they had to be saved and they couldn't stand up for themselves. So, and you guys come up with really great answers. So there might be something, that I haven't thought of that you guys may have thought of. So, but that's our reading for this one. So I will see you in the next video.